want to take a few moments to talk about the Canon 5DS and 5DSR. Now, what many of us are waiting for, myself included, is the 5D Mark IV. We're not quite getting that yet. We're about a week away from the announcement of these 5DS and 5DSR cameras. Really, the only difference between the two is the R is going to drop that low-pass optical filter. So these specs are not official. These are rumored. But in my experience, when we're just about a week away from the actual release, the specs are almost always very accurate. Maybe some slight changes, but never on anything that is crucial. Let's take a few moments and run down the spec list, and then I'll share some quick thoughts about this. So we've got 50 megapixels in both of these cameras. That is an immense amount of megapixels, and we'll talk about who this camera is targeted at in just a moment. I say, how do they even begin to cram that many megapixels onto the sensor? Or maybe you don't. But the truth is, the Canon 7D Mark II already does that. It has basically the same pixel density, but in a crop sensor camera with its 20 megapixels. We've got, I said, the 5DSR is not going to have that low-pass optical filter. That's going to give even sharper detail. Nikon has begun leaving that off many of their cameras and sensors, and with very good results. Why doesn't everybody drop it completely? Well, you still have some issues with dealing with moire. That is that optical illusion and finely repeating patterns, screens, tile roofs, some pinstripe type fabrics that can really wreck, especially video, but pictures as well. Pictures, it's much easier to deal with in post-processing. Video, it's a little bit trickier to work around that. And it's something that has, I don't want to say plagued Canon, but Canon certainly isn't at the top of their game in dealing with moire in the past. Magnesium alloy body, same thing as the 5D Mark III. So this is a professional level body. The one picture we have of it so far, it looks basically identical from the front, from what we can see, with the same rows of buttons up top. Very similar look and feel to the camera. Weather sealed, of course. Dual Digic 6 processors in there, so it should be a pretty snappy camera. It must be. It's going to have a huge pipeline to be handling these 50 megapixel files, shooting up to 5 frames a second. So that's a lot of information it is processing. It'll be interesting to see just how big the buffer is and what kind of write speed we're talking about there. ISO sensitivity, ISO 100 to 6400. No mention of higher or extended ranges right now, and I have to say 6400 is fairly low. That adds into what I believe this camera is targeted at that we'll get to in just a second. A high precision 61-point autofocus system, that's the same as the 5D Mark III, but they're now borrowing that ITR, which is that intelligent tracking recognition that uses the metering sensor in conjunction with the autofocus to be able to figure out the size and the shape of the subjects moving across your frame and determine the best autofocus point. So pretty smart. It's already in the 1DXS system. 150,000 pixel RGB sensor, a fine detail mode to picture styles. I don't know. We'll see. 1.3x and 1.6x crop shooting modes. Now this is a little funny because you can't put crop lenses on a Canon camera unless they're from a third party. Canon's own crops don't fit on here. But at the same time, being able to crop in and work with, get a little bit more range and work with more reasonable size files when you don't need 50 megapixel, because we don't all need 50 megapixels all the time, though some of us might think we like that until you sit down in front of Lightroom and have to start post-processing those. So 1.3x and 1.6x crop factors, that's one of those things in here that I think, well, we'll see if it works out. It could be a customizable quick control screen. So right now most Canons have a Q button, brings up a little screen where you have options. All of the major features that you want in the camera are options, and something like the 70D, it's then touch sensitive. This sounds like it's now going to be customizable. So you choose what you want in all of those little boxes and really set it up for how you work. Nothing about a touch screen, nothing about articulating screen at all. Time-lapse movie mode. Now, I'm really interested because they also list interval timer. Now, the 7D Mark II, I have a video coming out soon on this, has two nice features that are upgrades from previous Canons. That is interval timer built in, and also bulb mode timer, which is listed for this 5DS and SR set in, which means you can ditch the intervalometer, and you can ditch the intervalometer for bulb mode too, because you can program in and say, I want the shutter to stay open for 35 seconds, for 20 minutes, for an hour and 20 minutes. Yes, you can go that high in it. I'm not sure what kind of picture you're going to get, but you could do it. So that is also listed to be in here in the 5DS. But what is mentioned here is time-lapse movie. What I'm curious and hope and wonder is, does it in-body, in-camera, convert any interval shots that you've done in a time-lapse into a movie? The GH4 does that. There are other cameras that does that as well. The GoPro series cameras are getting firmware upgrades soon that will do that. So it's nice. That's a nice feature to be able to shoot an interval time-lapse, because 99% of the time what you want out of shooting a time-lapse is a movie file. So the bulb timer I mentioned, and then USB 3.0, just like the 7D Mark II. You know, I'll tell you what, I hate the USB 3.0 connectors, but let's not get into that right now. It's nice to have a faster connection, and it's going to be needed if you want to plug this camera in. So who is this camera targeted at? We've got insanely high megapixels. We have not a huge ISO range. Really think we're looking at folks who want the utmost image quality and are able to shoot in fairly controlled conditions. This is not going to be the jack of all trades 5D Mark III replacement, which I'm hoping here a little bit. But the 5D Mark III is a really good all-around camera. It does video good, it does photos well, sells incredibly well. This camera, I'm gesturing to the imaginary 5DS, is going to be targeted at your studio professionals, serious landscape shooters. Beyond that, I'm not sure. Let me know who you think it's targeted at missing down in the comments below. I will say that also, absolutely nothing mentioned about video, which makes me think that it's going to offer basically what the 5D Mark III offers. Obviously, if it was 4K in there, they would be listing 4K here, or the specs would list 4K. So I don't think we're going to get an upgrade there, which could be disappointing. But again, we're waiting for that 5D Mark IV, hoping that there's 4K in there. I still have mixed feelings about that. I'd like it, but I would be surprised, because Canon's got their cinema line. If you want 4K, you can step up to the cinema line. If you want a jack of all trades, the next logical will be the 5D Mark IV. That was good. Quick thoughts on this camera. Clearly, again, it is a huge jump in megapixels. We've got, I think the 5D Mark II is sitting on this table as well, 20-ish megapixels or 21 megapixels, 22 megapixels 5D Mark III, and then the 5DS 50. Huge jump. And I think that right there tells you that it is not the next progression in this line. That will be the 5D Mark IV. And now I'm repeating myself. So leave your comments, your questions, your thoughts, your criticisms of me and sharing these of the camera right down below. I'll be happy to read over and answer them. Later this evening, live podcast with Christina and I. We'll be talking a little bit more about this, but lots more photo information. Tune in for that, 5:30 p.m. EST. Thanks so much for watching.